Our Corporate Governance Minister Thembi Nkadibeng says her department had set aside more than 5.6 billion rands for natural disaster relief and recovery operations in the past 2 financial years. Northwest KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, Western and Northern Cape were among the beneficiaries. Governance expert Dr. Harlan Cloete joins us now to help look at the allocation. Dr. Cloete, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on this evening. 5.6 billion could sound quite significant to myself and maybe some of our listeners, but in the context of the disasters that this country has had to cushion, 5.6 billion rand might not necessarily be a huge amount of money.
Good evening, Thabo, and good evening also to the viewers. No, you're right. A lot of municipalities have got aging infrastructure, and as the minister said, a lot of those funds will go into relief, repairing the damage that was caused by flooding and other natural disasters. One only hopes that the allocation goes into the right hands and that municipalities actually utilize the funding for which it has been earmarked.
Do we have that degree of capacity, because now and again when you read the reports from the Auditor General, they'll tell you that municipalities are unable to budget and plan for infrastructure projects. Never mind disaster projects, but just the day-to-day projects that need to be carried out by municipalities.
Look, I read that COGTA report earlier this afternoon where it says, about 2/3 of municipalities in the country high risk and medium risk. And so, yes, municipalities have been struggling. If you earmark funding, there's also the complex issue of procuring of services and supply chain. But I think what is welcoming in my reading of the report is that municipalities, although the funds have been allocated, there's very stringent control measures in place that includes monthly reporting in terms of progress, so that we do not have wasteful and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So what the Treasury, what COGTA has built in, I think are mechanisms to ensure that the funds go for which it has been allocated, like I said previously. So municipalities are struggling, like previous reports also confirmed, either in project managing or even procuring these services of consultants that can do the work, because a lot of the big infrastructure projects, often they are outsourced to specialist companies in the case where the municipality do not have this capabilities.
So, Dr. Cloete, looking at something, for example, like the eradication of informal settlements, right? We've had the minister here numerous times, and we speak to her and to say, why are these municipalities, with the amount of money that is being given to them, unable to deal with this issue? But you see them now and again returning those funds to Treasury without being used, the grants in particular that have been allocated. And one train of thought is that, and it's a sinister way of looking at it, but unfortunately that's the reality, is that whilst the money is there, many of these officials are looking for a way, for lack of a better word, to steal the money. And if they don't come up with a creative way of stealing the money, they'd rather have it sitting there and not be allocated to a point where it returns to Treasury. So, I mean, what's the real danger, again, here of this disaster fund just sitting there because the politicians are unable to come up with a creative way of raiding the kitty?
Look, the minister is a former councillor as well, so I think she understands the complexities of local governance very well. So some Treasury brought a very interesting report last year that talks about capability. Some of our institutions simply do not have the capabilities. In other words, the ability to get things done. So infrastructure project calls for engineers, it calls for project managers, etc. And some of those skills are not in municipalities. And so you rightly say, I think what gives me hope is the risk factors, that how to mitigate the risk of the funding not landing in the money of corrupt officials, is the reporting. So that oversight responsibility, or that oversight, has been built in, and I would want to believe that there's an official at COGTA that tasked to ensure that the reporting gets done, and that we watch it and that there's consequence management. Because it is no use we allocate funding to a municipality and the municipality do not have the capability or the ability to utilize this funding. Because, corruption for me is tantamount to treason. If you have the money but you can't spend it because of poor administration, that is also because you are withholding. Infrastructure projects like this have got the ability to stimulate the economy, to stimulate local labor. Supply chain and local economic development working together to ensure that we utilize sometimes also local labor. So it is such an important infrastructure because a lot of these jobs are very labor intensive. And so one hopes that the municipalities that have been allocated these funds have the capability to be able to utilize these funds.
And if we were as communities to have some degree of confidence that these disaster funds are actually going to go where they're supposed to be going, what should we look at? Should we look at municipalities, for example, that are beginning to attract the necessary skills, or at least that put in place people with the necessary skills to be able to drive these infrastructure projects? Or should we be looking at nationals sending the necessary support, or even provinces that are going to work very closely with these municipalities?
I think, one of the shortcomings of our democracy is sometimes that we have communities sitting back and saying, services will be delivered to me. So we've got a participatory democracy system that has ward committees. And so what I like about this is that the minister has allocated, here are the municipalities that have been funded. So municipalities, through the Ratepayers Association, through the civic organizations, through the ward committees, have got every right to ask the municipality, okay, you have been allocated these funds in an open, transparent way, as the minister said. Tell us what is the plans? When is this project going to kick off so that we have local accountability? I think if we reflect on local governance over the last 24 years, because our current system of local government has started in the year 2000, developmental local government, local communities, and we need much more active citizens and civic organizations playing a much more hands-on role to hold local government to account. Local government, they're not doing you a favor when they report to you. And so it's an open, our participatory democracy system calls for participation and active participation of citizens in the affairs of local government. So local citizens and local formations have to become more vigilant and more active in holding local government to account.
How do you see that happening? I mean, you're saying that you are glad that somehow in this fund the minister seems to have put in place some rather important controls. But every time we have a conversation, for example, about controls of the use of money at local government, you hear the argument that says, well, our democracy is geared in such a way that you have separation of powers. You have three spheres of government. So, unfortunately, there's not much that national can say at a local level. There's not much that province can say at a local level, because local government is its own sphere of governance.
No, it is so. Look, no sphere can do it alone. That's why we've got cooperative governance, we've got intergovernmental relations, IGR. And so these three spheres are interdependent. And it is not quite right. The province do have an oversight role in terms of the MEC that is appointed. For example, the Constitution allows for the province to even place a municipality under administration, as happened, for example, in the case of Tshwane. It has happened in the Western Cape, in Kannaland municipality, where the provincial MEC took over the running by appointing an administrator. So ours is, so that intergovernmental relations, that dynamic relationship is there. What we do not have enough is, I think, that active citizenry, where local formations play a more active oversight role. And so what you have, if you look at the definition of a municipality, It's the community, it's the administrators, and it's the politicians. And sometimes the politicians and the administrators sometimes even keep the community in the dark. And so we need to, I think, over the next 5 to 10 years, we need to make sure, communities need to make sure that they understand the intricacies of local governance and hold the ward councillor and the community to account. We have, for example, an annual report. You have currently now, it's IDP season. So all municipalities, if you're in South Africa, we've got wall-to-wall municipalities, and all municipalities follow the same path. They have community consultations now where they go out to community with the IDP, which is the Integrated Development Plan. But you know, some communities have also become tired of these meetings because they say, you keep coming back to us, but really nothing changes. And so the system is there, the structure is there. It is local communities that have to become, I think, more active in holding local government to account, because local government now goes out to communities and say, listen here, this is the progress that we have made. What else do you need to be included in here? And then they budget. But unfortunately, you know what? One official once told me. I asked him, what do you do with all the inputs from community? And he looked at me and he says, you know, we take note. And that unfortunately has been the attitude that a local government makes up their mind, this is what we're going to do, and they simply take note. And so public participation in this country and co-creation of policies, I think local government is slow to that, because administrators specifically have been guilty in the past of just using these IDP meetings as compliance tick box exercises, and it doesn't really speak to genuine participation where people participate in trying, like developmental local government says, local government working with communities to find sustainable solutions to their problems. And so officials come almost prepared and just use this as a tick box exercise. As the HCRS report said last year, that there's a lot of wicked compliance sometimes where we do things not out of heart conviction as officials, but we do it, you know, just to tick the box and to say, yes, there was a consultation, attendance registers, and that is.
Dr. Cloete, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on. That is a governance expert, that Dr. Harlan Cloete with us. Let's take a break. We'll continue in a moment.